Hi guys, today we're going to be working in the vegetable garden. We're going to be setting up a couple more tomato trellises because I've got the last 6 tomato plants that we started from seed earlier this year still sitting in nursery containers. And when I show you guys these plants, you're going to be like, dang Lexus, those should have been in the ground months ago. But once we get the trellises set up and get these tomato plants planted, they're going to be so much happier. They're going to explode with growth. Once we get that done, we're going to move on to planting some of our fall crops. Let's talk about fall crops for a minute. These are basically a repeat planting of crops we planted in the spring. Things like carrots, radishes, brassicas like cauliflower, broccoli, things that we can plant now and we can harvest from before the first frost comes and takes the plants. And the best way to figure out what you can plant in the zone that you're in is to Google your average first frost date. Just Google average first frost date, punch in your zip code, and you'll get an average date of when that first frost is likely to come. And from there, you can count backwards to today and figure out how many days you have until your first frost. And that'll help determine what you're able to plant now and harvest from before that first frost comes and takes the plant. So here's a few things we're going to be planting today. We've got a couple different varieties of summer squash. Both of these are 57 days till harvest. And we know by Googling our average first frost date, we have 76 days until our average first frost. So we have more than enough time to get these in the ground, get them growing, producing fruit, and we can harvest off of these for probably a few weeks before the frost comes and takes them. Same thing with our carrots. We've got our Scarlet Nance. These are 60 days until harvest. We have a couple of cucumbers that we're going to be planting. One is looks like a pickling cucumber, 47 days till harvest, 60 days till harvest. This is a Sumner cucumber. They both look so yummy. And then we have our radishes and our lettuce. And these we're probably going to wait a few weeks before we plant them because these actually will do better once the weather cools down a little bit more. And then we also have some bush beans. These are 53 days. These are jade bush beans. These are 53 days till harvest. So we're going to plant these too, and we're going to be harvesting off of them. Most of these, except for our radishes and our lettuce, for a few weeks before our frost comes and takes them all. Except for the carrots, I should say, because as the weather cools down, the growth will slow down, but it'll also it'll help concentrate the sugars in the carrots and make them a lot sweeter. So these we can probably still be harvesting off of them in November and December, quite frankly. And here are the tomato plants we're going to be planting today. Look at the size of these things, you guys. They're huge. And they're just stuffed in these tiny little containers. We've got to get them out of here. You can see that they're just starting to bust out of the soil. The roots are starting to pop out. And I've explained before when we planted tomatoes earlier that you can plant these deep into the ground because the tiny little hairs that are on the stem will turn into roots. But if you leave them in a container too small, what eventually will happen is that the roots will start to try and root into the air. And look at all of these roots just going all the way up the stem. Unreal. So we're going to groom all of these up, get all of these dying dead foliage and low hanging foliage off and get them into the ground and hooked up onto the trellising system. We're also going to be throwing in some perennials as well to help with pollination. We've got 8 or 10 back to the fuchsia salvias. Look at these, they're starting to bloom again. These are root bound as well. I got these for an earlier project and changed my mind, so they've been sitting in their containers all season. They're stressed, they don't look so great, but they are pushing bloom, so we're going to get these interspersed in the beds as well. We did finally get rain though. 2 days of rain. The gardens are happy, the plants are happy. I'm happy because I don't have to lug a hose around everywhere. But the zinnias and the limelights took the brunt of the storm. So while everything in this bed looks beautiful and lush, The hydrangeas took the brunt of it and succumbed to the weight of water on their blooms. And you can see that some of the branches have flopped over. I did come out here and shake as much water as I could off of these blooms, but because the blooms are so massive and the weight, once they start to flop, it's very hard to get them to stand back up again without staking them. But this way, at least I know what I'm gonna need to address when I go to prune them. And the zinnias right along the fence line, they look beautiful, but some of them have tipped over, leaned over, fallen over. Look at this set. They're busting through the twine that I have over here, and they're just leaning. They collapsed onto the little trellis that we set up. So here's where we're going to be working today, in these two raised beds right here. This used to have our onions in them, and I removed all of them. The fig tree, if you remember, the fig tree that used to be here, it blocked too much of the sun, and the onions just didn't get enough sun. And they take like 110 days from the time that you plant them till harvest. So there wasn't enough time to get them to bulb up. They were shaded out too much. Carrots, we're going to be harvesting the rest of our carrots that we planted in the spring, and I didn't thin these out, so that's probably why they're not growing too much. But look at this. What are you? Do you see that? Look at that. Caterpillar. Oh. Now it just makes me want to look through everything. Oh well. Anyways, we're going to harvest the rest of the carrots, and then we're going to amend the soil again with some biotone starter fertilizer. I'm going to add a little bit more raised bed mix in here and some land and sea compost in both of these beds, get the soil fully charged up and ready for our fall crops. This is the raised bed mix that I've got in all of the beds. Land and sea compost, biotone starter fertilizer, and I'm going to fertilize the tomatoes with some tomato tone. They've been in their containers for too long, so I think they really just need a good feeding. All right guys, I'm just going to dive right into this, get it all done, and then I'll come back around and take you on a quick tour and show you how it all looks. All right, let's get to work. Not today, Satan. All right guys, we got everything done and planted, but before I go around and show you everything, I want to show you how I'm going to attach these tomatoes to the trellises because I'm doing them a little bit differently than we did the other ones. So if you remember the last time we did this, I took the twine and I just started wrapping it around the base of the stem, and then gradually as the tomato plant grew, I just continued wrapping it, and this was basically the anchor for the tomato plant and it held it in place. For these, I'm going to do it a little differently because I planted them so close together. They're probably like a foot apart. I'm going to be pruning on these a little bit more and keeping them more to like a single leader. So instead of winding them around, I'm going to use these little clips and clip onto the string and attach it to the tomato plant. Let me show you. This is the little clasp. You can get these on Amazon. That's where I got them. I'll put the link in the description box. And it has little teeth right in here. And this is where you can see, if I close it, this is where it's going to hold on to the string. So I'm just going to take it, put the string right in there, right into those teeth, and then close the clamp right around the stem. And now it's just anchored to the stem, just like that. And then if I want to release it, I can just push down on this tab and release it. And these you can reuse. I have a whole bag of them. All right guys, doesn't this area look so much better? All right, so let's just start from the top. We harvested our carrots and then I amended the soil in both beds. I added a little bit of raised bed mix to this bed to kind of bring the soil level up. But in both beds, they got biotone starter fertilizer and some tomato tone. I didn't put any land and seed compost in. I'll do that after all of the seeds that we planted germinate. Then we came in and set up our trellising system, which pretty much mirrors the tomato trellising system over there. We have 2 8-foot garden stakes plunged into the bed, connected by a 3-foot piece of electrical conduit, and those are PVC tees to connect them. We have a shower hook, we have our twine that goes all the way down to a landscape staple that's buried in the ground, and then we used our plastic clamps to clamp the tomatoes in. So then we came in and planted our tomatoes, and then we planted all of our fall crops, or most of our fall crops. We've got, in this row, we've got jade beans. I put in some random perennials for some pollination. These are back to the fuchsia salvias. We have our squash over here, which I have everything labeled. These are the early yellow summer squash. Then we have cucumbers, pick a bushel cucumbers over here, and the Sumner cucumbers over here. And then right in this little square foot over here, I've got 4 rows of carrots. So we have 16 carrots going on in here. And then I basically just did the exact same thing in this bed. Except for I found some parsley, so I planted a little parsley, which I have to snip because it's starting to bolt a little bit. But all in all, really happy with how everything turned out. Let me show you from this side. Looks so good. And give these tomatoes a couple weeks and they'll probably be twice as large. Over here, this is where the fig tree was, and I just came in with a bunch of annual flowers and just tossed them all over, and we're starting to see some growth. Zinnias, snapdragons. I don't even remember what else we threw in here. But this will be our little pollinator bed, which kind of goes perfect with the zinnia patch. And then just backing up all the way. This area is looking really good. Really, really happy. The only things I didn't plant today were the radishes and the lettuce. It's still a little too hot and humid. I figure maybe in like 2 or 3 weeks the weather will break, the humidity will break, and we'll cool off a little bit more, and then I'll find a spot and get them planted as well. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have a chance to get out into your garden and get a little dirty. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.